What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Whiskey Jedi podcast here on the channel. I am the Whiskey Jedi, Jake Berlin. As you can see, I'm joined today by one of my good buddies, my fellow whiskey connoisseur, Mr. Dom Brown. What's going on, man?
I'll take that title. No one's ever called me a whiskey connoisseur. It makes me feel a little bit above my stature, but I'll take it. I'll take it where I can get it,
Yeah. Look, we're here to talk some whiskey. We're here to talk some Star Wars. If you never joined us before, thank you so much for hanging out. Appreciate you checking out the channel. We combine Star Wars topics, sometimes non-Star Wars topics, but Star Wars topics with a different whiskey every time we do a show. And this time we are doing Willett Bourbon, which comes from Kentucky. And it is a pot still reserve Willett. And one of the most interesting bottles I think I've ever seen for whiskey. Super crazy looking. I have yet to pour, as you can see, because there's nothing in his head. Dom has poured his already.
I did.
But apparently it creates a super cool sound when you pour it. So I'm going to try and get it on camera. And we're going to be getting to that in here in just a sec. But we're also going to be talking about an interesting topic in Star Wars of if the franchise could ever focus on a bad guy. There's a lot of great villains in Star Wars. There's a lot of good bad guys, whether it be a super villain like Vader or a bounty hunter. But for the most part, we've seen good guys be the focus once they turn good. In most recent, that was Boba Fett, who is kind of now like a hero. But can it solely focus on a really big villain? We're going to dive into it, talk about it a little bit. But before we do so, I say we pour a glass. Well, me pour a glass anyway. We see how this Willett is. And Dom, just correct me if I'm wrong. You said that you have had a different Willett, but you haven't had this Willett.
Correct.
Okay.
I had some super fancy, take all my money drink at a bar one time.
All right, let's see if I can recreate this sound. I have it next to the microphone.
I don't think it plays as well, but
yeah,
you heard it, right? Like it sounds
for my audio listeners, they're like, "What the hell are you talking about?"
It sounds like a fake sound that you would hear like someone would make.
It's almost like the Das Boot from
yeah.
Oh my god, why am I forgetting the name of Beerfest? Is it Beerfest? Beerfest, right?
If it's from anything else, I don't know.
I think that's the movie's name, right? Is Beerfest?
No, yeah, that's the movie.
Okay. I was like confused.
If there's another Das Boot version, I don't know it.
Okay, fair enough. All right, well, Dom, as always, thank you so much for joining me, my man. Appreciate it. Cheers all the way across the 30-minute drive that we are separate from each other.
It feels like oceans, Velvety. It's velvety.
Wow. So it has this. I mean, it has that nice bourbon burn.
Mm-hmm.
But then it wait, hold on. Very vanilla.
Yeah.
Almost like a vanilla caramel-ish.
I'm never good at getting the caramel taste. Maybe just because, I do not like caramel, just caramels, as in candy and stuff. So my palate isn't really defined towards that avenue. So I never pick out caramel.
I will say it is pretty strong. It definitely has a nice kick to it. But even on the nose, it has a pretty solid kick to it.
Yeah, I get the citrus, but I think it's pretty, for me, at least on my initial, I think my first taste was very smooth.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely not bad.
I gotta ask, because I don't know if anyone's ever done it, but I did pour myself 2 drinks because I also made myself a cocktail. So I'm gonna see how it is in a cocktail.
There you go.
Yeah, that's good.
What is that? Just a bourbon and Coke?
Fanciulli. It's best way I've heard to describe is it's an Italian Manhattan. There's Fernet. It's basically
never heard of it before. So.
you make a Manhattan with, but you add Fernet.
Interesting. All right.
Yep.
All right. Fair enough. Fair enough. All right. So we'll get back to the whiskey here in a little bit. Let's talk about some Star Wars, man, because look, and it's no secret here. Every time you show up, I always mention that you come up with like 30 different topics to get to on this show.
It was 28 this time. I counted 28. Cut myself off. But yeah. So we actually met in person.
Yeah.
This
well, I mean, we met in person before, but you came over last week.
We engaged in person contact, and he was like, "Hey, I want to do a show this week. Let me know if you're in." I was like, "Okay, I've been working 4 10s, so I work 10 hours every day. It's not amazing at all." And I was like, "Yeah, I'll text you an hour and a half with all my things." And then I texted him the next day anyway, because I couldn't.
Because it took you 24 hours to find all those topics.
Yeah. I only had half of the amount of topics that I do after the full day. But I don't know. I think about movies all the time.
Same.
So when you ask like, "Hey, what do you want to talk about?" I was like, "Well, I could talk about word vomit of movies or TV shows or whatever." So
yeah. No, I think this is a good topic. It maybe has come up in conversation before through another topic, but it's never been like the full focus of a segment or a show. And it's super interesting because Star Wars has some of the best villains that we've ever seen in either film or television. Obviously Vader, the Darth Mauls, even someone like the Tarkin, the Emperor, for an extended period of time, right? But with all of those bad guys, you thought it'd be a great idea, and I completely agree with you, of asking the question, can the franchise ever focus solely on a villain? Like a movie or series. And I know that in comic books, we obviously have some villain focused stuff. We're keeping the books and the comics out of this for the time being. Live action television shows, live action films. Can Star Wars actually focus on a bad guy? Can the story be told from the bad guy's perspective, where we are following that person rather than following the hero and bad guy at the same time? Super curious as to what Dom thinks. I will say off the bat that we're probably going to mention the Acolyte, and it's funny because Dom didn't actually know anything about the Acolyte. And
I learned how to spell it this week.
Yeah. And it was briefly announced like 2 years ago, and it really hasn't. Not much has happened since then. Basically, what the Acolyte is this came from a novel. They are followers of the dark side. That's a loosely term for those watching who may try to correct me, you Star Wars nerds. But they loosely follow the dark side. So that can kind of fit into this realm, but we're talking Sith. We're talking legit bounty hunters. Like we're talking the bad of the bad. Can it focus on the bad guys? And as on the thumbnail, you can see I put both Thrawn and Revan, who are notorious bad guys from Star Wars history. Both have times of being heroes, but can we get a story that is focused on those characters? Dom, why don't you start us off, man? What do you think about this? Can this franchise actually do what something like the MCU did to an extent, where Thanos was almost essentially the main villain of Infinity War?
Yes, I mean,
or main character, not villain, main character.
Yeah, that kind of got in that realm, got me thinking, and also what they are doing in the MCU as far as, one, they brought over all those Netflix shows to Disney Plus now, so those are kind of back in the picture. Obviously, like Punisher is an anti-hero.
Moon Knight.
Spoilers, Moon Knight they're going to tiptoe that line a little bit there too. And I was just thinking, Star Wars has we got 11 movies.
Yeah. 12 with the Clone Wars, but yes.
Okay, 12 with the Clone Wars. What? You got like 3 different animated shows. You got Mandalorian, Boba Fett, gonna have Obi-Wan.
And Ahsoka and all these.
So yeah, I know we'll get to Andor, but you have all this huge universe and you're telling all these stories. Like at what point do we just, it's like, all right, we heard all the good guy stories in Star Wars. Like, all right, we're following these people, and don't get me wrong. I mean, there's a reason I'm here talking about Star Wars on the internet.
I think we're both hero guys, right?
I will show up for anything they put out. Like,
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, at this point, they can just it could just be like Kathleen Kennedy, giving George Lucas a high five for 25 minutes, and I'd be like, oh, this is
Yeah.
amazing. But yeah, I was just thinking, like, if they obviously want to keep expanding on this universe, there's got to be different stories and different avenues
Yeah.
to pique interest from non-committed viewers or fans, and then also to keep fans that have watched all this whole time. Obviously the Skywalker saga seems to be over, maybe, but I think with the way that Mandalorian and Boba Fett went, it's kind of going into the underworld, the belly of the beast, but it's not really focused on the villain or like there is an antagonist and obviously in all these stories, but what I was thinking when I kind of pitched it to you was like, like the people are bad and they're doing bad stuff the entire. I'm thinking more of a show, not a movie. The entire show.
Yeah.
Someone like Breaking Bad, like a Heisenberg, where you're like, this guy.
That's what you brought up when you brought it up. Yeah.
Like, there's qualities that you find redeeming, maybe, that you're like, oh, he's doing it for his family. But at the end of the day, he's a murderous drug kingpin. Like, so if they could do something along those lines, and what would it look like and how would it work?
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously a lot of possibilities when it comes to Star Wars. The first one that kind of like came to mind when we were talking about it, just because we are going to be seeing them, is what if we had something that was from the perspective of the Inquisitors, who are obviously Jedi hunters, right? They are the bad guys. That would be incredibly fascinating to see a perspective of Jedi dying and being hunted from that perspective of the Inquisitors. But I think like when this conversation comes up, the main one that kind of always seems to make its way into the conversation is not necessarily like the origins, but the early days of the Sith. Like what were they all about? We obviously know that hundreds and thousands of years ago there was Jedi, or thousands of them. There were not just two. There was no such thing as the rule of two. They had an army. They had just as many Sith as they did Jedi, and that's why there were full-blown wars between the two of them. I have said previously at some point, maybe it was in conversation, maybe it was on a camera, but I think it would be very interesting to do a show that was maybe focused on someone like Darth Bane, who has a long, long history in Star Wars, and the series ends, whether it's 2 seasons, 5 seasons, whatever, it ends with him creating the rule of two. So we get to see the entire lead up of why that decision was made. It's focused on a bad guy. He holds a red lightsaber. He is not doing good things. I mean, you're right. We've had all this content in Star Wars, and if we've had moments where maybe a show or a specific story plot point has focused on that bad guy. Like we've had plenty of Darth Maul episodes in the Clone Wars. We've had plenty of Darth Maul episodes in Rebels, and Thrawn focused episodes in Rebels. And I'm sure we'll have a Thrawn focused episode in Ahsoka, because he's in Ahsoka. But can the main character, can the title character essentially, can that show be called so-and-so? I would love to see it, because it would break a lot of branches as far as what they've done in the past. We wouldn't be going back to the same well. I bet you would bring out a whole different breed of filmmakers who typically direct and write darker stuff, right? They're not going to line up with the hero story. Some people, right? They're going to line up a little bit more with the darker stuff. That's what I'm saying. Well, and another thing that someone just popped to my mind, and it's been a rumor lately, but Damon Lindelof, who did Watchmen, is rumored to do something Star Wars. And he typically does. He typically does darker stuff, and I don't necessarily think that he'll do something that is villain related. But you're right. Like imagine Fincher doing a story that is, I don't necessarily know if it has to do with the Force, but some bounty hunter who is the worst of the worst, is like the scum of all scum. It's Boba Fett before Boba Fett, essentially. He's killing people for money. He's not holding any punches back. Just imagine the storytelling you can get from that. How different it would feel for Star Wars, because we've had great moments with villains, right? Like Vader, Maul, even Ren when he was a villain before he became a good guy. They've all had incredible moments, but to see a full story focused on them would be pretty cool. I don't know if Lucasfilm has the balls to do it. I really don't.
That's why we're just hypothesizing. We're not saying that this is going to happen in all honesty.
Yeah.
It's just, if they're going to keep pumping out Star Wars content, eventually it's going to be like, all right, yep, the good guys won again. And we focused on the Force. They did it. Cool. But Star Wars at its core is good versus evil. The light, the dark, Force, the Sith. I get that. I 100% get that. It's just, how many times can we just tell that story or use that as the core belief or the core motivation for the storyline? And I feel like there's obviously plenty of people who want to see Star Wars content. Obviously, that's not a hot take by any means. So, obviously, there's just all these avenues they can dive down. And as I said, with the MCU going darker, obviously Star Wars can follow suit. It kind of already started with The Mandalorian and Boba Fett. So we'll see how dark they can get. I think Andor is going to be. It's got to be.
It's a good. I'm glad you brought that up, because we know that it takes place. Well, it obviously takes place before Rogue One, but it also is set in a time where we know that Andor's parents were separatists, who in the prequels, they were the bad guys. So he comes from a bad family. And I don't know necessarily if his parents are bad. Maybe they got wrapped up in something. They didn't have a choice. But he comes from, in the prequel era, he comes from the villain side of the story. And we know that at the beginning of Rogue One, Cassian he murdered Tivik. He shot him in the back. Right, and then he tried to get out of there, and he wasn't holding anything.
With the name drop, humble flex.
Yeah, thank you. And so we've seen him go there, and we saw pretty much throughout the first half of that film that he was willing to do whatever he had to do. Like, he was going to kill Jin's father, and then he pulled that back, and so he obviously has done that in the past. Maybe that's like the tip of the iceberg, and like that's the start of it all. Then we get the Acolyte, and that's kind of like really dark, and they're kind of like almost tipping their toes in the water a little bit, seeing how it feels, seeing what the reception is like. But you're right. There's obviously a lot of hero stories you can tell. There's a lot of characters. There's characters being created every day for Star Wars. Like, we have the High Republic going in comics and books right now, which, by the way, they have a lot of focused villain stuff with the Nihil. A great group of villains that they're kind of putting a lot of focus on. But can that transfer over into television and movies? That's the big question. Will they ever be able to do that? I think you're right when you bring up the Marvel point of, like, if they see that Marvel does it more often, not just like the one-off, right? Like, they do it more often, like the Moon Knight, or when they bring Deadpool back. Because, like, Deadpool's a hero, but the dude slices heads off, right? Like, he's killing people. Same with Punisher. Like, if Marvel goes there, then maybe Lucasfilm is like, okay, well, we see that it does make money. We see that people actually do like these stories. Maybe we try to make something like that. Maybe, obviously not as violent, but something that does kind of is on the other side of the line when it comes to the hero villain stuff. I would love to see it, because you can't tell me that in a history, however long Star Wars stuff lasts, it could be 100 years, it could be 1,000,000 years, I don't know. You can't tell me they're not going to do a Sith story at some point. Like, that makes no sense. The Sith are literally just sitting there waiting for you to make them into something on screen. Like, it's been said before, they have an army of Sith thousands of years ago. Tell that story. You have characters like Darth Revan, like Darth Bane, all of these characters who are just waiting to be told, and you haven't done it yet. Like, what's holding you back?
So I want you to spitball on this, because I only consume visual media I've said on either this show or one of the other shows, I can read. I can. Okay. I just don't.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
books, I mean, I'll dabble in comics every once in a while, but so like I know the names that you are saying. If you showed me a picture of them, be like, who is this? I'd be like, I could make a guess, but like I've heard Darth Revan before. If you put him in a lineup, maybe I name him if I have a second try.
So many people who may follow Apocalypse know this when we did the Padawan podcast days, but Darth Revan is one of my favorite characters of all time. Of all time. And I'll bring up a picture of him on my phone.
Is he strictly like in books, video games?
So he's from Legends. He was in Knights of the Old Republic, the video game. He was the main character. He was the main character.
Okay.
And then he has a lot of Legend stories in
the only Star Wars game I never finished.
So they're remaking it.
It was the bane of my existence. That game
you didn't like it? You didn't like it?
No, I couldn't get past a certain. That was like the one game I couldn't get past a certain point.
So this is him.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, he's one of my favorite characters of all time. Honestly, the second we see him in live action, like top 3 instantly, no question.
Damn, okay.
As far as Legends go, he was the character I always gravitated towards. He has a very interesting story if they decide to go that route. He does become good at one point. He kind of flips. He teeters a little bit. But he is good. He is bad at times. But the dude is incredible. And whenever they tell his story, like he's the one character in Star Wars right now that if you came out tomorrow and you said, "Oh yeah, we're doing a Darth Revan solo film," Star Wars would be saved. Everyone would lose their crap. He's that character. Okay. He's that character. So I'm super excited they're remaking the Knights of the Old Republic game. It leaves me hope that that they do his story one day. Fun facts for everyone watching. Super nerd moment here. In The Last Jedi, in Luke's hut on Octo, there's a kyber crystal hanging in the hut. That's actually Revan's kyber crystal. And then in the Rise of Skywalker, we have the legions of the First Order stormtroopers that are red. They're named after Sith lords, and one of them is called the Revan group. So he's in canon. He's mentioned in canon. We've just never, and we actually saw him in a deleted episode or scene from the Clone Wars, but it was never actually released, so it's not considered canon. So in canon, he's only ever been mentioned. He's never actually been seen. If they include Knights of the Old Republic in the canon, if they canonize it in the current Lucasfilm stuff, then that'll be like the first official thing we actually physically see him in. But his history is awesome. I mean, he's in a time period where it's all out war. It's like legit war, every single day, the Sith, the Jedi, just everyone going toe to toe. But as far as like what they're doing in the books, it almost feels like right now, the closest thing that we can get to a villain-centric story is if they did something with the Nihil, which are the villains of the High Republic stuff going on right now. They're basically space Vikings is what they are.
Intrigued.
Yeah.
Fully intrigued.
See? And if Brian's still watching, that is the first thing that I said when they announced it. I was like, I'm sold. I'm in. Space Vikings, you got me. They look super cool. They're super, super villainous. They do some crazy stuff, and they have a really, really cool couple of characters as far as their leaders that could really do some damage on screen if they ever did it. It almost seems like a no-brainer that at some point they do. But, I mean, time will tell. I mean, it really comes down to whether or not Lucasfilm wants to do it. It almost feels like, they're almost afraid to not have good characters in their stories, right? And maybe that simply because we know that this has always been a big part of Star Wars, even back to like George Lucas. Maybe that comes down to something like them wanting to sell merchandise. Like they're not going to want to sell merchandise to someone who kills people, Like, but again, I would buy something for that character if it's done well.
At the same time, you see guys, wearing Sam Crow t-shirts, Sons of Anarchy t-shirts, or you see people wearing, Sopranos stuff. Like all these characters in those shows are just, if you knew that person in real life, you would be petrified of them.
Yeah.
This is a murderous person. So like, I'm not saying that, it has to be Anakin killing younglings for like a whole season. I'm just saying, like, these characters at the end of the day are bad people. They are not, there is no good in the show. Maybe there is a law enforcement, you could have like the pilots from Mandalorian, like trying to calm everyone down and keep the peace. But at the end of the day, it's the outlaws. It's the Sith. It's, outlaws of the Hutts, whatever it is. I just think that would be a very interesting take, because you could use all these characters and all these countless species and creatures throughout this world to tell a story that has never really been told before, because no one has this open universe of characters like Star Wars does.
Yep. Real quick, I want to bring up Brian's comments here because he is chatting away in here. He says, now that you say that, Jake, if Palpatine is naming his legions after Revan, that makes me think he wouldn't turn good, because why would he name them after someone who turned good? I mean, you're right, Brian. And that leaves me even more excited, because Revan was always incredible when he was kind of on the bad side. He was very, very powerful. He would challenge as the most powerful character we've ever seen in live action the second that they ever do him. So, and he also says, yes, he was in on the Vikings. See, the second they said Vikings, I was in. But no, so Dom, I wanted to bring up one other thing, because this is another thing that people have been kind of clinging on to, is in Solo at the end. Well, actually in Solo, the organization known as Crimson Dawn, which is led by Darth Maul, and then later picked up by Kira. So because you don't read the comics, I'll just say this out, and this is spoilers for anybody who's watching, but Kira actually has come back in the comics.
That only works for visual.
So she actually has come back in the comics, and they're doing a story where she is essentially leading Crimson Dawn. And a lot of people over the years since Solo have basically been saying, well, there's your way to do a darker story. Focus on
I'd eat that up.
That it's essentially your mob story. It's your mob style story in Star Wars, right? You have an organization who is not doing good things. They have their hand in a lot of different things around the galaxy. They're very heavily involved in the underworld. You can pick it up either after Solo, so you have Maul in it, or you pick it up after Maul dies, after Rebels, and then it's Kira and a bunch of non-Force users, essentially, because they were brought back into the fold in the Clone Wars in season 7 when they finished that off, when Paul Bettany's character showed up in animation. And so that is almost like also kind of sitting there of an organization that got brought up in Solo. They're doing all these criminal acts. They're kind of a gangster mob feeling to them. There's a TV series waiting to be made.
Great point. Because I remember when I watched that, I was like, okay, so obviously Crimson Dawn, that's going to come back. It felt like immediately.
Yeah.
And we're still sitting here and Emilia Clarke's stardom is obviously not as high as it was then because of Game of Thrones and all that. But it seemed like they were trying to attach onto her rocket ship, basically, and then they haven't done anything with it. So I would love to see everything you just said, though. I would be in on all that.
Imagine Emilia Clarke leading a Crimson Dawn series for Star Wars.
It makes too much sense.
She led Game of Thrones for 8 seasons. She was the name that everyone was talking about as Daenerys for 8 seasons. You can't tell me that people would not be excited to see her do a television show again. I
mean, I don't know if she just asked the world up from them, but I mean, it's Disney. They own the world. So if she had whatever price she wanted, just...
And here's another cool point too. She's actually currently working for Disney because she's going to be in Secret Wars on Disney Plus.
Oh, that is right. Yep.
So she still has a very heavily involved Disney connection at the moment.
it makes too much sense. They set it up, and then with the whole Darth Maul teaser at the end there, I don't know what they're doing. I mean,
Yeah,
I do think, and this is just a thought. I'm not in the room with Star Wars creators, but I mean, maybe everyone's just kind of using Marvel as the guinea pig. Let's see what they do, and all right, they're just showing Moon Knight crush people's skulls in. So why don't we just? I'm not saying Star Wars has to do that they have to like show bloody violence and crimes. Just if they focus on criminals in the show, and I don't care if the Force is a part of it, if the Jedi are part of it. It's just I thought Boba Fett would kind of dive more into it, but obviously
they made him a hero.
And maybe I think Andor may go deeper into that, because it seems like Andor's turn has already been shown.
Yeah.
In Rogue One. So maybe all the shady shit he does up to that point. Because I mean, if he's bad in Rogue One, he's got to be worse before then. Like
he's got to be way worse.
If he's just shooting people point blank.
Especially if it's possibly before he even joins the rebellion. Think of that.
Exactly. Yeah. So I do think that I am excited for Andor. I don't know how that's all going to play out, since we know how that character ends up.
Yeah.
I am interested in that story though, because Rogue One grew on me like a fungus. I watched it the first time and was like, okay, whatever. And then every time I watch it from now on, I'm like, this is amazing. I love Rogue One so much, and I'm very interested in like Andor. I mean, I'm interested in any of those characters really, if they threw them in something prior. But Andor is a very interesting character to dive into, because he is basically the hitman of the rebellion.
That's actually a good way of putting it.
So
it's a really good way of putting
it. I mean, obviously, I don't know. All right, pull it. You got to pull it. The general, or the guy who's basically giving him orders on the side. What's that guy's name?
I'm not gonna be able to pull that one.
Okay, sorry, I put you.
I bet you Brian will put that in the chat. That's
someone hit it. Because I mean, you dropped the other guy's name that he murdered, like it was,
Oh, what's it?
That's like your brother-in-law. You knew it. So I was like,
General Draven.
Okay, Draven. So obviously that guy's a shady shit. Like he's got to be hitting licks prior to all this stuff. So I would love to see him just being a shitbag, and then obviously in Rogue One he kind of turns. It's like, all right, I've been messed up, and for the better of humanity, I got to go steal these plans and destroy the Empire. But we'll see. We'll see how that plays out.
I'm with you. I think Andor could be a really cool thing. We know that he is at the start of Rogue One. He's not the greatest of guys. It was Jyn that kind of turned him in her search for hope, if you will. So I'm very interested in seeing what they do with that project. That project's been going on for a long time. It's a spy espionage thriller, and I'm all for it, especially if the guy who is the one we're following and seeing it through his eyes is not the best and has the best intentions behind everything. He's going to be doing whatever he can to get the job done. And that leaves open a little bit of the villain side. Like I said, we know where it ends up and everything, but I'm super intrigued by that show and what they're possibly doing with that character, especially because of his past is so, I don't know if dark's the right word, but just he comes from a different background.
He's a troubled youth.
A troubled youth. That's a great way of putting it. Yeah. Okay, so I do got to ask though, and this might spawn us into a different conversation, but if there was like, say that a Lucasfilm, say Kathleen Kennedy, say you were sitting in a room with Kathleen Kennedy and she wanted you to pitch a villain story, a dark bad guy type of series, movie, whatever it may be, what is the one story that you would like to see when it comes to this villain side of Star Wars?
So I guess the one thing I would actually want to see something completely new to me. So as I said, I've only consumed the visual media. So I don't need, like a Darth Vader show or a Palpatine show. If they show up in it, that's
Please,
fine.
please don't ever do that.
But like, I don't need anyone that's already
Yeah.
been a character.
Yeah.
If you want to bring up the characters that you've stated that I obviously know by name now, and I can name them off, but just not right now. If they want to go in those characters, that's cool. What I had in mind is actually, I just want like really scummy people. So obviously, like Mos Eisley, it seemed like that's what I thought was going to happen with Boba Fett, but I'm actually kind of interested in just the scumminess of Phantom Menace. And if they wanted to do just the Slemos of the Hutt realm, from Phantom Menace, I'd be all for that. They're fixing pod racing events. They're, running this is how bad I want it to be. They're running the slave trade. Like, these people are bad people. They are not good. And I just how they deal with that is up to them. I feel like there's a plethora of characters that they can create just for that.
I mean, it's right there for the taking. It is literally right there for the taking. So I do not disagree with that. I think focusing on something like the Hutts would be very cool because we've only seen them in kind of snippets. Obviously, Return of the Jedi. They were in Clone Wars here and there. And then recently we saw them just for a very small bit in the Book of Boba Fett. Whether or not they come back, I'm not sure. But I mean, look, Jabba had his hand on Tatooine for a very, very long time. And there's people like Jabba, all over the galaxy. So it wouldn't necessarily have to focus just on Jabba, because a lot of people have been complaining about the fact that we keep going back to Tatooine, which I understand. I understand that argument.
There's one other thing I thought of too, but I'll
go for it. No, go for it. Go for it.
In Force Awakens, I forget what the other group is called, but there's Conja Club, and there's the other group that basically get onto the ship with Han, and that whole whatever that monster is escapes. Whatever those two groups are up to, I'm in. What's the guy's name?
I think the Conja Club would be super cool
because
those are the dudes from Eco Uways.
Thank you.
Those are the dudes from the raid.
Do crazy shit.
I think actually focusing on the Conja Club would be super cool. That's a great call.
And whatever shady stuff they're into, I'm good with. Just let them run rampant. Let them.
And that's a time in the galaxy that we haven't really seen. Like, we obviously saw just what was happening in The Force Awakens from that perspective, but like, what else was happening outside of the First Order? Because the First Order was almost like somewhat kind of still new a little bit.
Because I'm not a book learner, Conja Club isn't in like any other material. It's just in that movie.
think maybe they've been mentioned, and Brian can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they've been mentioned and maybe seen in like the background, but they've never been like the focus of anything.
Okay. Because obviously we have our lovable smuggler in Han Solo, our glorious king. But if they want to show the more dirty, sleazebags of the smuggling world that probably exist, Conja Club seems like a good avenue.
And I'm not saying this is what I want, but here's just like you said, smuggling, and it kind of just woke something up in me. What about following Poe Dameron as a smuggler?
So that would be okay. So
because he was a spice runner.
Okay, that actually
with Zori Bliss.
That's Kerry Russell's character, correct?
And Babu Frick.
Babu Frick. Okay, that is actually very intriguing as well. That is, I think Oscar Isaac may be onto other things, and God bless Oscar Isaac. This is just
God bless that man. God bless.
Take a moment, Oscar Isaac. But that story did feel a little it had me wanting more at the end of or during.
I agree.
Uh,
Like
episode 9.
how bad was this dude? Like how bad was Poe Dameron, right? Plus Zori Bliss was a badass. I loved her.
Oh, and their little connection, I was.
Oh, they were 100% in love at one point. 100%.
Mhm. And all you see is her eyes, and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, I just fall
Yeah,
in love.
si-
I'll
sign
watch
me
the
up.
rom-com of this movie. You want to do a Harry Met Sally of just
Yeah.
you two? I'm in.
So to answer your question though about the Force Awakens, it was the Conja Club and it was the Guavian Death Gang.
How dare I forget the Guavian Death Gang?
So the Guavian Death Gang would be the other, which already sounds super bad.
But the funny thing is, I can only hear Conja Club in that guy's voice.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Brian, to answer your question, Jake, you wouldn't want a Lord of the Sith live action. That is the one exception of a Vader Palpatine story. So Dom, to answer Brian here, because I don't think you know what I don't think you know what Lords of the Sith is. It was one of the first ever new canon novels to be released when Disney purchased Lucasfilm. They did what was called the Road to the Force Awakens.
Okay.
They had I think I have the books back here. Yeah, I have it right back there. They did Lost Stars, they did Aftermath, they did Lords of the Sith, they did all these books. And Lords of the Sith, it started, I'm not going to spoil it, but essentially what happened was Vader and Palpatine got trapped on a planet and they had to fight their way out of the planet. And obviously they're not good at this time. It's taking place, like early days of Palpatine and Vader. It's not anywhere near where he's turning back to Anakin. They're straight up murdering fools. There's actually a point in the book where Vader uses one of the good guys as a human shield.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Gives me the end of Rogue One's flashbacks, and I love it.
Tell me about it.
There is another.
Imagine that on the screen, dude.
That's oh man, rough.
That's like Vader hallway status. That's essentially what it's like.
See, like that's what I'm saying. Like I don't need like.
That would be the only. That would be the only Vader and Palpatine story I would ever want. And to answer your question, Brian, the beginning of the book, I don't believe it's during the entire book. I could be wrong. I haven't read it in a long time. But Hera's dad, Cham Syndulla, is one of the characters in the book.
Hera is like she's in the top 3. I don't want to say my number 1, but she's like in my top 3 of characters I do want to see.
Same. So because you're never going to read it, I'll just explain another scene to you. The beginning of the book, Vader actually chokes out an officer on another ship, like across like miles apart from each other, and Cham is on the phone with or on the intercom with the character while he's being choked out by Vader. Force chokes him, like Force chokes the dude.
Oh
yeah, bro, it's crazy. It's crazy, man.
My back got tight.
It's like they've gone there in books, like they've done that in books, but they have not done it in live action. Adapting something like that would be, oh my god, I would love to see it. That's the only exception, though.
Like I don't want people to think that I just want like chaos and destruction the whole time. Because like I'd be cool with if it was literally like Palpatine sympathizers on Coruscant, and they were just trying to like overthrow,
which are considered acolytes.
So like yeah, if they want to do that, and they're just like, all right, this is our guy.
Yep.
But I don't know if they technically see him as a Sith. They're just like, no, this is the guy I voted for to be in the Senate, and
yeah,
I want to just overthrow this government, and we want this empire instead of whatever else they got going on. Or man, I lost my train of thought.
So while you're thinking, I do have my idea. So I'm not going to say the Sith one just because that's kind of like the obvious one. Obviously, my number 1 choice would be anything Darth Revan, like anything Darth Revan. But the other one that I would want to see would be in the heyday of the bounty hunters, a bounty hunter group doing jobs together. Mm-hmm. And we know that they're not good, obviously. They're not good characters like Bosk, Boba. IG-88, all these characters that like the Empire Strikes Back bounty hunters essentially is what I'm getting at. I want to see them in a group.
Selfish motives. They're just like,
yes, I want to see them in a group doing a job for a series, a solo movie, whatever it may be.
That could work as a movie. I think that would kind of be a cool movie.
Those are big names: Bosk, Boba Fett, IG-88. There's so many different types of bounty hunters that we've seen throughout the history of Star Wars. I mean,
honestly, you can make that into a comedy. You could make that into like a Guy Ritchie Snatch kind of like goof, like everything.
Like The Gentleman.
Yeah, like they go on this job and they're all shitty people, but the things that go wrong.
The Suicide Squad.
Yeah, exactly. Just like
there you go.
Things go wrong.
Get James Gunn to direct it.
Yeah, like that literally could be a movie that works. But
did you find your train of thought back?
No, you got me on a totally different train of thought. I'm looking at myself right now. Sorry, audio listeners. I am so red. I got so sunburned. It's embarrassing.
You were out in the sun today, huh?
Yeah. No, I was trenching. It's miserable. And then I decided to go on a run after work. That's hard to say out loud.
Well, it's your Friday, right? It's your Friday.
Runner. Yeah. But Star Wars, we're not here to talk about exercising. But yeah, there's so many different avenues. Like, it doesn't need to be like this R-rated bloodbath. It could still be criminals. It could be like, what you just said. I'd be totally on board for it. It's just a totally different side. Like take good and bad out of it, as far as like the Force and the Sith, like Jedi and the Sith. There's just these other characters that I just feel so untapped into. And I think I know Brian has mentioned this person once. I don't think he really cares, but I'm so on board for bringing Ventress back in some way.
He's gonna yell at you right now for saying that.
I don't think he cares about that character, but if she was in something and they focused on the Night Sisters,
there's a story, the Night Sisters, yes. So, and that's a great way. That's a great point, because the Night Sisters are essentially the magic of Star Wars. It's the Force in a way. See, look, I don't like. There you go. I don't care. Oh, hi, Gypsy. No, the Night Sisters are super interesting just because their magic is essentially the Force, but not really the Force. It's something completely different in Star Wars.
Star Wars magic that isn't the Force.
Super strange. But their abilities are so unique, and obviously, like you said, Ventress being the most popular of them, and her being Dooku's apprentice, and then ultimately getting cut out by Dooku. There is a story there with her that was supposed to be part of Clone Wars, but then was later turned into a book. Okay. It's called Dooku's
Jedi. She could be fleshed out in the books now. No.
Yeah, it's called. Why am I forgetting the name all of a sudden? Let me see. I'm forgetting. And Brian, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Dark Disciple. Dark Disciple is what the book is called. It is with her and Quinlan Voss. It's the two of them.
Okay.
And Quinlan Voss goes undercover as a Sith in that story. And he becomes a Sith apprentice, and he gets a little too deep.
I think she's just so interesting because she's in no man's land. I mean, same. That's kind of like Darth Maul as well. Those two characters, like, they're not great people.
No,
but they're not on either side.
Yeah.
So having someone like that be the focus of a show, movie, whatever, it's just something different that we haven't seen in Star Wars, and I'd be game.
I'm totally game. I mean, we saw an episode in the Clone Wars when and this is bringing it back to the bounty hunters, but Boba Fett as a teenager was running his own bounty hunting ring, and Ventress was part of that ring. Mm-hmm. So, and obviously she wasn't using lightsabers, but like she still had her abilities, and she's a character that needs to be made in live action. She's too good of a character to not see live action at some point. She wields 2 separate lightsabers. Like she's just so unique. And like you said, the Night Sisters, they're such a unique part of Star Wars that has not been tapped. And 90% of Star Wars people have no idea what the Night Sisters are because they've never seen the Clone Wars.
Yeah, I did my Star Wars homework once I heard that the last season of the Clone Wars was like peak Star Wars television.
It is peak Star Wars.
Yeah, that last season is really good. And I hope we didn't spoil anything. I don't remember what I've said because the sun in my face. I'm starting to feel hot. It's pretty hot. But yeah, that last season. If you don't watch anything else, watch the last season. It's great.
It's fantastic Star Wars. All right, Dom. Well, any final thoughts on the villainous side of Star Wars? Anything else that we didn't talk about that you would like to bring up as far as Star Wars goes?
I mean, I believe we're kind of just going down an escalator, basically. Mm-hmm. If you consider the top of it to be, A New Hope, and the bottom of it to be this new land that we have unexplored as far as the Sith are concerned. Andor, we're kind of I think we're past the middle point, really. And Andor, I think, is going to open up some new avenues. And I think it's going to be a little dark. And I mean, it should be. Going into the Acolyte, I mean, do we know anything about the Acolyte besides the title and the showrunner?
So there's one cast member. Okay. Amandla Stenberg is the only cast member, and she is from The Hate U Give. She's the main character of The Hate U Give.
Okay. I never watched the movie, but I can picture her.
Yeah. And so, she played Rue in The Hunger Games. There you go.
That's the same girl.
It's the same girl.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Right. But yeah, so that at the moment, that's the only thing we know. We don't know what type of character she's playing. We just know that she's been cast and that the woman who did the Russian doll, Leslie Headland, is the writer / showrunner, and there's no release date. So that is kind of everything we know at the moment. But this is the synopsis. I'll say this. This is the synopsis. It says, Star Wars series that takes viewers into a galaxy of shadowy secrets and emerging dark side powers in the final days of the High Republic era. And the High Republic era is set a couple hundred years before the prequels, but we don't know exactly when the final days of that era are.
So realistically, that would be that's all new characters.
Everything is brand new.
Yeah, I'm in for that.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I love the characters that are in Star Wars, but let's step away from them.
Yep.
Get some fresh blood in, and see what other stories they can tell. I mean, at the end of the day, I just want to be entertained with good stories. Once you kind of run out of stories for certain characters, I don't not want to see them, but let's open the door for other people.
Agreed. Dom, before we get out of here, Brian has a question for you. Who would you pick as your number one bad guy to get a story? And let's say anybody. It doesn't have to be narrowed. Let's just say anybody.
Anybody. I mean, I do love the bounty hunter group. Like, that's something I've thought about before, is the bounty hunter group of just being, to be honest, it would have been Cad Bane.
I think there's a possibility there, though.
I mean, they could do what they're doing with Andor.
I don't think we've seen the last of him. I don't think we've seen the last of him.
I'd still watch it if he wanted to lead that group of bounty hunters.
Or just a job on his own.
Or, yeah, like whatever. I would have said, like, without hesitation. I mean,
before Book of Boba Fett.
How long ago was that? Just 3 months, right?
Yeah.
Okay, if I
It
said 3 months,
started. It
yeah.
started at the end of December, and it ran. I don't know, a couple weeks.
Okay. Yeah, like without hesitation, I would have said Cad Bane. Now that we've seen him and I kind of know some other things, I don't know. But let's go with Cad Bane for he's got an asterisk by his name, but Cad
Love
Bane.
that pick. Because I'm a huge Cad Bane guy. Huge Cad Bane guy.
That was.
I mean, the first time we ever, or one of the first times we ever saw Cad Bane, he stole a Jedi holocron out of the Jedi temple. The dude's badass.
The first time we see him in live action, I still have zero complaints about that whole sequence.
I think you texted me that day, and we were like, "How early did you know? How early did you know?"
I was like, "Bro, this is." I definitely texted you. I texted you and one other person, and I was like, "This is
peak Star Wars.
Exactly what I've been waiting for." Yeah, peak Star Wars. How it ended, other thoughts, but that first episode we see him.
I don't think it's the last we've seen of him. So, just my thoughts.
Also, I'll just say real quick, we know he's still around, but I would be honestly down for Cobb Vanth is a side character, but it is strictly focused on the villain. It could be what are the guys that run the Spice?
The Pikes.
Pikes. It could be like literally just called the Pikes. Cobb Vanth is like the law enforcement agent for that
Pike
show.
Syndicate. There you go.
And they it's just the Pikes running Spice. And
that would be a cool series. That would be a very cool series, seeing the Pikes' perspective.
And everyone loves Timothy Oliphant, so
you can't go wrong.
There's your redeeming character that people can attach to, and then obviously you can build off of that.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
All right. Before we wrap up, let's go and talk a little bit more about this whiskey. What the people truly came here for. I finished my glass, so I enjoyed the hell out of it.
Going back and forth.
Yeah, I've been enjoying the hell out of it. Willett, bourbon, and right now we have the Pot Still Reserve, the most unique bottle that I definitely have in my arsenal of whiskey.
I used to think it was like a cordial bottle. I never, because it's all the cordial bottles are like I got unique shapes.
Yeah.
So I always thought like, oh, that's some like weird liqueur that I'll never try. And then I was like, oh, it's in the whiskey section. Why is it there?
So it is from Bardstown, Kentucky, straight out of the heart of bourbon. It is very nice. It's got a little vanilla flavor there, a little fruitiness. I taste caramel. Dom does not taste caramel.
I just never picked that up.
And you said it works good with a cocktail because you just made a cocktail with it too, right?
Yeah, this is peachy keen.
Fair enough. Yeah, and it's not an expensive whiskey. It looks expensive, but it's not an expensive whiskey. It runs about $30-$40, depending on where you go. And I got this for Christmas, so I'm very happy that I was able to open it finally. Typically, I let my guests choose what we have here.
I got screwed then because I definitely got it for like $50.
Oh, really? Maybe I'm wrong. I might be wrong. $40 to $50.
I got it for like $50. So.
Okay, $40 to $50 is probably where it's at then. Again, I got it for Christmas. I didn't actually buy it myself.
Yeah, free whiskey is the best whiskey.
Yeah, it's the best whiskey.
Doesn't matter.
So,
but yeah, definitely check them out. They got a lot of different varieties.
I think, and because I have their page up right here, let me see. They have, so I'm going to run through these real quick. These are the options they have for Willett. They have the Willett Pot Still, which is what we're drinking. They have the Willett Family Estate Bottled Bourbon, the Willett Family Estate 4-Year Rye, Johnny Drum Private Stock, Old Bardstown Estate, Old Bardstown Bottled and Bond, Johnny Drum Black Label, Noah's Mill, Rowan's Creek, Pure Kentucky, and Kentucky Vintage.
Noah's Mill, I definitely had that one. It's a little higher in percentage. I want to say it's in like the low 50% range, but that's one of the finer whiskeys I've ever had.
It's 57.15%. 115 proof.
Little higher than I thought. But yeah, if you're ever in San Diego, there's a cool place in San Diego, just the Whiskey House, and
I'm writing that down.
Everything.
Gabby's mother lives in San Diego, so I'm definitely writing that down.
Everything. They got everything.
All right. Good to know.
from like
Yeah,
Jim
so
Beam
look,
to like Pappy's. You're getting it all.
all right, perfect. Yeah, so Willett, check it out, guys. It's from Kentucky, straight out of the heart of where Whiskey Town is. This company itself, this distillery, they have 12 different options to choose from. But again, we are drinking the Pot Still Reserve, which is very, very good. Total thumbs up for both of us here. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that villain conversation. For all of you watching back on the replay, we would love to hear your thoughts on possible characters that you would love to see the focus of a Star Wars story in the future. Any bad guys, villains, no anti-heroes, none of that crap. We want to see dark people lead Star Wars. Plain and simple.
Shitty people doing shitty things.
That's the best way of putting it. That's the best way of putting it. So, Dom, per usual, man, appreciate you joining me. It's always a blast. Drinking whiskey, talking Star Wars. I'm sure we'll do probably a non-Star Wars topic next time because we have so many to choose from. But hey, we'll see what happens.
I was thinking, I don't know how many times I've been on this show or the other show, but
I think you've been on this one like 4 to 5 times.
I was thinking 4 times.
Yeah.
Do I get a 5-timers jacket if I get on one more time?
I'll get you a 5-timers jacket.
Do I get Paul Rudd and Steve Martin to come out with me?
I'll get you a 5-timers jacket in.
You don't go all out.
I'll get you a 5-timers jacket in the form of either a bottle of whiskey or a glass that says 5-timer. Deal?
All aboard. All aboard.
All right. Perfect.
I'll go back and see because I'm trying to think off the top of my head.
I think it's 4. I do think it's 4.
My 4th. Okay.
I think because we talked. So we talked. We talked obviously Star Wars villains. We talked our heist team.
Yep.
Was one of them.
We did the props thing.
We did the props. Was the props the first one? Has it only been 3?
Is there another one? That's the thing is like I'm trying to remember between here and Apocalypse.
I think it's actually only been 3 now that I think about it. You've been on Apocalypse a bunch of times.
But in the all right, so in the collective Jake Berlin universe, I've been over 5 times.
Yes.
It's only been 3 on this show. This is my 3rd time or 4th time?
This will be your 3rd time.
And then
either way, Dom,
I've never been on like 3 or 4 of the other ones.
You currently are the most returning guest I have. So there you go. There you go. All right, everybody. We're going to wrap up. Thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate all of you in the chat. Really appreciate you commenting along. Everyone watching back on the replay. Appreciate it. I know that I've gotten a bunch of new subscribers lately who have checked out Gabby and I's Marvel watch-alongs. Continue that because those are an absolute blast. We are going to be watching the Avengers very, very soon. But thank you so much for checking this out as well. Of course, hit that thumbs up button.
Side piece. Those are the best.
Thank you. I really do have an absolute joy doing them. So I'm glad other people are enjoying them just as much as I am. Hit that thumbs up button because it lets the videos be seen a lot more. Subscribe if you have not already. And again, comment. We want to hear from you guys. Who are the villains or bad guys that you want to see be the focus of a Star Wars story? We'd love to hear you guys. So again, Dom, thank you as always, my man. To everyone in the chat, thank you so much. Hope you guys have a great rest of your evening. And we'll catch you guys next time.
Give me the 5 times.